In this lecture, we are going to learn about code completion. Code completion is a feature that when you are programming and you have to choose a Java object, like a function, it shows a catalog of options from which you can choose. For example, this situation in here. I have a variable called new s of type string, and I want to assign it a value, so I start typing, and a pop-up is going to show up telling me which options I have containing the string I have already typed. For example, generate string is a valid candidate. As you have seen, I had to type things in order for it to appear. But how can I make it appear before I start typing? Well, that's easy, just hit Ctrl space. Well, I think it's worth mentioning that the string you write doesn't have to be at the beginning of the options, but it could be anywhere in those options. For example, if I write str, generate a string is going to be suggested. In addition to that, you don't have to write things that are contiguous. If I prepend gen, those things are not going to be contiguous in generate a string, but still it's going to be suggested. The only requirement is that the letters are in the same order as they are in the option. So if I change the order in here, and I write gen srt, code completion doesn't show anything. As you can see here, there are many options in the list, and it would be great if there were a way to make it shorter. You can get that effect by hitting Ctrl-Shift space, and then it leaves only those expressions that are compatible with the expression you are in and that are in the current context. So if we hit Ctrl-Shift space, we have these three options that are compatible because they return a string, and we need a string, and they are in the current context. Generate a string, the field tname, and the function name to a string that exists in every Java class. So this shows it doesn't have to be written in this file in order to be suggested in code completion. You can hit Ctrl-Shift space again, and you will get more options that are compatible. In this case, we are seeing the publicly available methods and fields of the instances of this class. In this specific case, those methods we can get through the field name to be referenced. You can hit Ctrl-Shift space again, and you will get even more options. I think the two first ones are the most useful. But what happens if you have several options and you don't know which one to pick up? Because you don't remember what the function was about. In that case, you can see the definition of the function in the same context you are in. Just hit Ctrl-Shift-I. A pop-up is going to show up with the definition. If the function has a Java doc, you can also see that in place just by hitting Ctrl-Q. If we select it and jump into it, we can see how the documentation has to be written in order to be shown when you hit Ctrl-Q, although this is the standard Javadoc syntax. The last thing we are going to see about this feature is that there are different ways to select an item from the list. You can select an item in the normal way by clicking over it, hitting Tab or hitting Enter. But there is another option that makes you type less. Imagine you have already selected a value for this variable, and then you realize you want to apply a function to it, and you select the option suggested with Enter. The result is that the expression is not correctly written because the variable is not inside the parentheses. You can fix this by selecting it using Ctrl-Shift-Enter. And as you can see, the variable is now inside the parentheses. Well, and that's all for this lecture.